Welcome family, welcome to Southampton Common on this beautiful autumnal day. I'm jumping on here today to really share some thoughts about 2020. I'm sure we've all heard so much about 2020 already, and I think when we finally leave 2020, there won't be any shortage of information or ideas or thoughts about what's good, what's bad, and what's not so sure. I think 2020, if anything, from an astrological point of view, we will remember it for the quality of control that have been placed upon our shoulders, upon our lives, and the limitations that we have felt with what we can do, how we must do things, where we can go, what we can't do. Also the fear. Now, not everyone's bought into the fear, but the collective has felt a deep sense of concern and fear for its life, for its safety, for its ability to thrive. And from my perspective, that really boils down to three prominent planets that we've actually got in 2020 sitting in Capricorn. We've got Saturn, the planet of rules, regulations, structure, government, and skeleton. It's also about our skeleton. So, it's not all about the bad rules. It is, some of it may have some value. We've also got Pluto in there. Now, Pluto is about power, control, and it's a rather dark energy. It's not always. I mean, if it's used in the right way, it's very transformative. And I guess maybe you could argue that the initial impression, the initial experience of this Pluto-Saturn will be a catalyst for our growth, will be a catalyst for our growing up, because Saturn is about maturing, responsibility to ourselves, and I think responsibility to ourselves is inherent in the journey of return to sovereignty. And we've got Jupiter. Now, Jupiter, unfortunately, is not the strongest when it's sitting in Capricorn. Jupiter feels quite limited, can become quite authoritarian. Sitting with both Pluto and Saturn, I think some of the titles you may actually then sort of pull through would be a megalomaniac, power hungry, tyranny. But tyranny can already sit with the Saturn and Pluto. So when you've got Jupiter there, the planet of growth and expansion, this can make it feel bigger than what we've ever experienced. And the truth is, it's not like we can look back anywhere in history where we said the whole world fell. How do I say this without being too negative? Where the whole world complied to one narrative, to one structure of experience, to one mode of living. This is not meant to be a depressive talk. I'm not attempting to make this depressing, nor is it about we are powerless. I was really trying to address the fact that, in effect, the very things that we see in our daily lives since this whole thing started is an access point to the very powers that are controlling the narrative. So you've got things like these. We've all seen them, and we've all held our opinion as to whether it was good or bad. We've all seen the markers on the floor. We've all seen the circles on the floor that says you got to stand here. We've all seen the signs that tell us what we have to do. That reminds us of the fear. But just as much as that is an access point for the control of those archetypes, the Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter is able to enter our lives through those symbols, we can then assert our response towards those same three archetypes through those symbols, because they are physical symbols. They are physical symbols. So we are not powerless in being able to respond to these symbols. If need be, as I mentioned to this friend of mine this morning, it feels like there's been a massive spell that's been cast upon all of humanity. A spell that is both binding and blinding. Now, the reason I'm saying binding is because a lot of the times when I've actually expressed a desire to take action with close associates who I trust as energy workers, who I believe are profound healers and able to create a wave with me, there is a reluctance or perhaps a reticence to actually move in the direction of responding to the powers that be. And I'm not saying this powers are human. We can paste them on humans, but what I'm really addressing is I'm saying that these powers are also archetypal. They've got to find the necessary containers to express them, but the energies are inherently archetypal. So that's where I feel the reticence comes from, this inherent binding. And another part of this trio of energies, the Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter, is they're currently sitting with a beautiful sextile to Neptune. Now, Neptune's the planet of the magical weave, and I don't mean hair. Neptune is sitting in a supportive sextile to the trio planets of power at this point. And Neptune is our planet that deals with illusions. Now, on a positive sense, it can be used to create some great movies, develop our psychic abilities, create deep sensitivity and empathy and intimacy connection. But on a negative sense, it can then be used when it sits with this supportive connection to the Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. That power trio could use and manipulate that Neptune to create, I won't say everything is deception, but it can create confusion. And if there's anything that we can all agree on, is the lack of clarity on how we are to move forward. Now, why am I actually talking about all of this anyway? It's not that I want to really bring in the sense of powerlessness, but I want to perhaps suggest that just as each and every one of us have access to the symbols of this control, because as I mentioned earlier, the archetypal energies feed into our world through these symbols. Now, whether you're going to take action on a sign or on a line or a boundary, or as simple as because everyone's been asked to carry one of these around with them, I feel that it's an effective way of actually communicating and expressing our sovereignty back to those energies that are pushing upon us at this time. Now, here's where I'm working with the symbolism and taking it into mythology. Now, Pluto has some rather dark connotations and connections, and one of the natures of Pluto, okay, so if we look at Pluto and Neptune because of that connection, Pluto and Neptune because of that connection, we could actually say that's like the vampire. That's like the vampire. Saturn and Pluto enhances that ruthlessness of the vampire in its ability to drain life, because Saturn and Pluto put together is very much like a death energy if it's misused. And you know, we've all been talking about the number of deaths. The whole COVID story is about people dying. I'm not on here to say whether they did or they didn't. It's a natural a matter of course. We all die at the end of the day. But it would seem that this year, above any, we seem to have become somewhat disconnected from the reality of living, disconnected from the fact that we actually do die, and how do we then honorably live in each moment. But again, this is this sort of distancing from the main point that I'm trying to bring us to, that each of us have got these symbols of control. And actually, we can speak back to these archetypal energies by a simple act of empowerment and assertion of killing the vampire. Just as they can bleed into our world through the symbols, we can assert our sovereignty through those very symbols. So, how do you kill a vampire? Why am I pointing at the sun throughout my talk? Because, okay, so the solar spirit within us might be one of the answers. But as mythology goes, you stake a vampire. And perhaps that's why I've actually been guided to come into the common. As you can see, lots and lots of trees. Maybe I'm supposed to find my stake. I am throwing it out there in terms of the symbolism of this energetic trio of archetypes, that we have a power-hungry, control, freakish vampire, and it is expressing itself through multiple rules and regulations that we can see before us in the form of masks and boundaries and instructions and rules. And perhaps one way of actually saying back to this trio of planets, I do not, or I am asserting my sovereignty, is to take one of these, to take it, find a stake before sunrise, take your mask. It doesn't have to be one of those expensive ones, because what you're really doing is symbolic. We're taking the opportunity to say what we, or how we intend to react or respond to the push of power. And that is that we would take the mask, which is just one aspect of this control. But as everything is connected, this is connected to the lines on the floor. This is connected to the points or the spots on the floor that says you must stand here, you must stand there, whatever. You can take one of these, take it to one of your sacred spots, before sunrise, because you always kill a vampire before sunrise. And you then, so you take your mask, you go with your stake, and you find a place where you feel you won't be disturbed, which feels sacred enough in nature if you are so blessed. And with intention, hammer that stake into the mask, thereby putting into action a symbolic act to destroy the energy of this power-hungry vampire and how it affects your life. One of the things that Dave actually said to me, my team, is that as much as we are working for the collective, when we attend to the challenges that we face, we are to meet them in accordance to how those challenges affect us. So whilst you are clearing the influence, the range of influence of this energy upon your life, you would in effect be creating a ripple of the same nature to move it through the collective. So the long and short of this whole talk, again, I'm just showing you the last bits of sunshine in Southampton Common. The long and short of it all is that the mask is infinitely connected to every expression. Each mask that we find is infinitely connected to every expression of control that this current energy is expressing through humanity. And therefore, just as it can then bleed into our lives through these symbols of control, we can then express and respond to the energy by staking it, taking it, using the fact that the nature of this energy can and does have associations to vampiric qualities. We can then attend to the energy in accordance with the mythological fixes when it comes to that issue. Again, this is purely something that I was inspired with this day. You may think Walter's lost his mind, but for those of you who feel drawn to try it, I will be doing it very shortly. Well, not today, but I'll be looking for a moment astrologically that would work for me. But, you know, we are looking at a period where the moon is waning, so it's a good time to get rid of something from our lives. So it may just redress the way in which the control part is expressing itself in your life, but it may, in doing so, create a greater sense of balance in how it's expressing itself in your life. So with that, I would like to wish each and every one of you a pleasant evening,